Liberty in our lifetimes in a free state of our own. That's the vision. That's the dream. We are building it in New Hampshire. I'm Eric Brakey, your host and renegade statesman for the Porcupine Report. Welcome to your source for porcupine news and free-range conversation on matters of liberty. All right, let's hop into the show. Hello and welcome, all you porcupines. This is your host, your renegade statesman, your executive director of the Free State Project, Eric Brakey. So glad to be with you this evening for episode 16 of the Porcupine Report. Thanks for joining us. Today, this is going to be the episode, it's just the PorcFest episode. That's all we're going to be talking about. We're going to have a great guest on she is Constance Spencer. She is the producer of the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year. We'll be talking with her in a little bit. First, I want to give a shout out. I was just in the last day of the Maine Senate. We were called in for veto day. We had to handle a couple of vetoes. They were really bad bills pushed by the very far left progressives in the legislature, and they were vetoed by the moderately more left. Moderate. I don't know. Anyway, it's all Democrats running everything in Maine. All the fights happen between them, and sometimes it feels like the rest of us are just on the sidelines, like saying, don't we care about liberty? No, they don't care about liberty. But anyway, I had a good conversation with a Republican state representative who I serve with on the Judiciary Committee. Her name is Representative Rachel Henderson here in Maine. And she told me that she had a conversation with a constituent of hers who regularly watches this very program, the Porcupine Report. And he was asking her if she works with me much, and was telling her all about the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So that was so encouraging to me, one, to hear that there are people out in the world who are fans of this show and who are talking about it with people. And I just want to give a shout out to this individual, Jim Green of Roxbury, Maine. Thank you for proselytizing for the show and for the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And if you do come to PorcFest this next month, it's just around the corner, I hope that you will stop by, say hello. Love to shake your hand, and that goes for everyone who watches this program and is going to come join us at the Porcupine Freedom Festival in June. Stop on by, say hello to me. I'd love to meet you. Love to hear your feedback on the show. I've been getting so much great feedback. It's been very encouraging as we keep going through episode 16 now. All right. So that's a natural segue, though, into our first promotion for this episode, which is the same promotion I'm doing every single episode because I really want you to do this. I want you to get your ticket for the Porcupine Freedom Festival for PorcFest, June 17th through the 23rd at Rogers Campground in Lancaster, New Hampshire. This is a family-friendly freedom festival. 4 Fs. That's a lot of alliteration. All right. You got to come. So much alliteration. You can't miss this. What also you can't miss, Ron Paul is going to be speaking to all the attendees of PorcFest and taking questions. Now, he's zooming in electronically. He doesn't travel to the same degree that he used to, but he's going to be zooming in, speaking with us. We got a giant, massive telescreen. He's going to be larger than life, at PorcFest. You'll want to come hear him and get a chance to ask him a question. But some other folks who are going to be zooming in, but this time they're going to be physically zooming in. They're going to be zooming in like vehicles, by car, by train, by plane, however they're going to get there, boat. I don't know. They're going to be here, and you get to go camping with 2,000 of your favorite libertarians. That includes Jack Hunter, Gene Epstein, Jeffrey Tucker, James Bovard, David Friedman, your humble host, Eric Brakey, and so many more, including tonight's guest, Constance Spencer, will be on in a moment. So this is not to be missed. Bring your friends, bring your family, reserve your campsite while supplies last. And there are 2 kinds of campsites you can get. You can get a campsite where you put up some tents and, have some, you can go tenting. Or we have RV sites. You can bring your RV and go camping that way. Or if you're not the camping type and you just want to like come to, spend the day with good, good, good times, good food, good people, all of that, then there's also a motel, and there are different kind of places. If you want to sleep in a nice, comfortable bed at night, those options are available too. Anyway, there's no excuse. We want you to come. We want you to join us. Grab your tickets at PorcFest.com while supplies last. That's PorcFest with a C, not with a K. All right. You go to PorcFest.com, as our friend Spike Cohen, who was on the program recently, he actually went to PorcFest.com. It was just a blank, empty site. So there's not even a barbecue festival out there that can compete with the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So go to PorcFestWithAC.com and get your tickets. And now, to join us to talk more about PorcFest is the producer of PorcFest, Constance Spencer. Constance, welcome to the Porcupine Report.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Hey, the pleasure's all mine. I've been so impressed with you and the entire team that's been doing so much work for months, and well, I guess really for like a year now, getting things ready for PorcFest that's coming up just less than 30, like almost, I guess, just over 30 days away. So there's so many things I want to ask and talk to you about, but I suppose let's start who are you, Constance? How did you get here? Why are you one of these crazy free staters who's living in New Hampshire, trying to create a libertarian homeland in the Granite State? And what does PorcFest in particular mean to you? It obviously means something, because you are you stepped up to the plate after several years of co-producing, and now you're the lead producer for PorcFest. What's your journey, and how did you get here?
So I'm going to give you a real short version of a very long, interesting journey. And so in the interest of time, but I was actually raised a Jehovah's Witness. It was apolitical. Moved to Alaska from Ohio when I was in my 20s, and kind of just did my own thing there, home birthed my kids, was kind of a hippie mom, not paying attention to anything. But when you're a hippie mom, you tend to associate with a lot of progressives. And one morning, my mom group said, "Do you know they nominated an Alaskan woman to run for vice president?" And I was like, "Really?" And so at that point, I became interested in politics. So that was 2008, obviously. And I tuned into a bunch of different podcasts. My kids were very little, and I had just learned that I could not eat gluten. So I was like trying to relearn everything in the kitchen. So while I'm trying to learn how to recook, I mean, I'm hippie mom talking about sewed my own cloth diapers, baked my own bread, we raised pigs, like very different than what my life looks like now in Alaska.
Yeah.
And so I started listening to these podcasts, and the next thing I know, I'm like, oh, I actually feel like I'm probably more like a anarchist, atheist, crazy libertarian type. So that got me involved and hearing about the Free State Project. And I went to PorcFest with my family or my ex-husband in 2013 and loved it. And at that PorcFest, we decided to move to New Hampshire. We had been talking about moving out of Alaska anyway, just because we had 4 kids, homeschooling up there. It's amazing if you don't want to be part of something, but I actually want my kids to be, exposed to more. I didn't want to homeschool them to like hide them away from the world. I wanted them to have more time to experience the world. So that's how I ended up at PorcFest, and it was at that very first PorcFest that we decided to move to New Hampshire. And without getting into all the details, like life has been amazing in New Hampshire.
Let me ask you, that first PorcFest you went to, what's like the most vivid memory of that PorcFest that you have? Like, what's the thing? I'm sure there was many different things that like put you in that mindset of you're making the decision to move to New Hampshire and be a part of this. But like, there was one thing that kind of was the thing. What would that have been?
For me, it was a lot of the talks and meeting the folks that I'd followed online for years. Like I said, it was 2008 to 2013. So getting to meet the folks from the unschool bus whose kids are now all grown, hearing education talks, meeting some of my friends that I had met through online community in person and seeing all the kids, because my kids were not there. That was the year that I flew down from Alaska, so I didn't bring the kids. So I just wanted them to experience what I saw all these other kids running around being free range kids. Fortunately for my kids, Alaska was pretty free range still at that point. So that was, but it wasn't, there weren't that many people. Like we had a great group of homeschool friends there, but my best friend lived 45 minutes away because that's 2 towns over when you live in Alaska. So it's a little different than New Hampshire.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've never been up to Alaska, but it's kind of on the bucket list. It's I often feel like there is, we have a little bit of frontier up here in kind of northern New England, Maine, and New Hampshire and Vermont, and some of that. I kind of wondered sometimes if there's a similar spirit to some degree, kind of in the the rural frontier
There's definite
areas.
there's definitely I mean, that's one of the things, not it wasn't just the Free State Project too, but New Hampshire itself is such a beautiful place, and it kind of reminded me of growing up. I grew up in the foothills of the Appalachians in Ohio, and then I moved to Alaska. So it kind of like it felt like somebody had blended those 2 places together and made the perfect place for me. And then of course we have the thriftiness. I'm very good at being cheap. Like so so I just feel like New Hampshire is perfect. We have the ocean still. Yeah, I think the fact I've often described, like I came from Alaska, right? It's not exactly known for being extremely it's not known for being authoritarian land. It was actually, I think, in the top 5 when they voted for the Free State Project. I think it may have come in the like number 3.
Yeah.
Um, so it's not, I gave up some freedoms to move to New Hampshire, but what I gained was the community and the place to put really focused activism, which I love. I want my life to make a difference in the things that are important to me. So I spend
Well,
a
you
lot of time.
Well, you clearly have been making a difference. I mean, obviously, you're the producer of the Pork Fest this year, and we expect thousands of people from both in New Hampshire and around the country to come and be a part of this annual experience that's taking place. Now, you have um, uh, you have co-produced a number of years.
I co-produced last year,
Yeah.
and I ran registration for a
Okay.
number of years. 2018 on, I had ran registration, and then of course in 2020 it kind of felt like Carla was the producer, and anybody on the team we're all kind of trying to figure out exactly how to make the show go on, not even knowing it's a campground, it was allowed to be open.
Yeah.
So so that
2020 was a bizarre year for everyone, and I think it was a really kind of planting the flag in the sand moment for the Free State Project to say, everyone else might be shutting down, but we are not.
yeah, just the number of people that walked into registration that year were just like, "Oh, it feels normal here," which isn't exactly usually what people say about PorcFest, honestly, but but it felt like real life again instead of behind a screen, behind a mask.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One of those moments where what do they say when the whole world's insane, the sane people look like the crazy ones. Um, we looked like the crazy ones for being absolutely not crazy. So, um, but I think it's a real testament to the fact that this is PorcFest 21 coming up, and there's not a little asterisk next to it saying, "Oh well, we skipped a year."
Yeah.
No, we got together, and well, let me ask you. So I know there's a lot of things about PorcFest that really kind of distinguish it from a lot of other great events that take place around the country. Other liberty events, freedom events. I'll be going to some. I'll be going to Freedom Fest, in Las Vegas in a little bit. We're looking forward to have a presence with the Free State Project having a presence there. But there are some things that just truly make PorcFest a unique experience. And one of those things is the fact that, yeah, there's an official, like there are official events, at the big pavilion that are put on by the organizers of PorcFest and the Free State Project proper, and you can come and see those. Certainly I'll be speaking there, but also, and I feel like I've certainly seen this develop more and more over the years. My first PorcFest was in 2012. And there was some hints of that there was some of this starting to bubble up, but nothing like what we have today of the vast decentralization of the programming at PorcFest, with so many different hubs and people putting on their own events. And it's like a choose your own adventure when you show up to PorcFest. You can completely ignore all of the official main stage events, and you could just spend your whole time out among the campsites at all the different hubs. What would you have to say to people about, I guess, that decentralized experience at PorcFest?
I think it's amazing. It's always tough as the producer or co-producer to balance um, putting those two things together. And I think we did a really good job this year of featuring the the pavilion and the 101 talks with our new interactive map and schedule. So PorcFest becomes what you make it. So anybody who has a campsite at Rogers has the option of creating a hub that came from Dennis Pratt, which actually stands for Hub of Activity. So you can make your campsite as small as, like, I just want to have a campfire with people that have read this certain book, and you can put that event on the official schedule this year online. Or you can do a full-on store, restaurant. It's really whatever you want to make it. So I love that. I think it really gives everybody a chance to see what's more popular, where people are coming from, what they want to see. Some of the greatest stories are people that are like, we want this, so we're going to create this. Like Stitch and Bitch is one of those things where the ladies got together. They've done it every year since 2020. Ilma does it in her fire steel tent, and they meet throughout the year as well. So it continued from that decentralized model. They were able to build a community that helps, that common interest building community. So I love that model. I love that it's campground wide now. It doesn't get restricted. Obviously, when you get bigger, there's more issues that develop. And so I try to keep as much hands off for rules as possible, but also there has to be some kind of structure. So balancing that is a challenge. And I don't know, libertarians aren't very opinionated, so they don't really tell me how I'm doing. Yeah.
What I do love is that certainly kind of when you're in a leadership role, putting on an event like this or running an organization like this, people have a million different ideas, and they'll always come to you and say, hey, you should do this or you should do that. And what I love about PorcFest is someone can bring you that idea and say, hey, you should do this. And you can literally turn around to them and said, we've given you the freedom to do that yourself. You can build what you want. And it's
yeah, our main sponsor this year, Brownstone Institute, did that. Jeffrey Tucker missed the VIP tent. It went away in 2020. It's unlikely to come back. I think it had served its time, and he still missed it. So Dennis Pratt told him many times, like, if you want a VIP tent on the field, create it. So last year he did, and he's coming back this year as our Diamond Plus sponsor. So he's going to be right on the field. Go find him, have Jeffrey Tucker mix you a drink. He started adding his events yesterday. The first one he added was happy hour from 4:30 to 5:30. So definitely check that out. But again, with sponsorship opportunities, they're all on the website. They have been since last August. So people have that opportunity to purchase a sponsorship and get a little bit more media attention to their organization. So
yeah,
that's another.
Well, I know we're really appreciate the sponsors that are coming on. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing Jeffrey Tucker there. I've been a fan of his for years, and it's great. It's great to have him in the Brownstone Institute. I believe they're founded to, try to make sure that the COVID era policies never happen again. And so I'm sure he'll be given some. I assume he's going to be speaking at some point during
Yeah,
during PorcFest. So imagine he'll probably be speaking about something similar to that.
I believe he's
Um,
on Saturday in the main pavilion,
oh,
Friday or
wonderful.
Saturday.
Awesome. Well, he's a very engaging and compelling speaker. I'll be looking forward to that. Um, and you know, how would people? So, I mean, I'll say one of the things that can be very disorienting, though, about an event of organized chaos like we have at PorcFest.
Yes.
It can be disorienting, particularly for someone who's new. Of how do they, if there's so many things going on all at once, how do they know what's happening, and how do they, if they're someone who likes to plan things out, some people maybe will just want to show up and wander around and see what they stumble across. That's an absolutely valid way to enjoy PorcFest. But let's say you're someone who likes to plan and likes to have an idea where you're going, what events you're trying to get to. What tools are available for folks to plan things out?
After PorcFest last year, Olga Sorens and I sent out a survey asking people for feedback, and that is exactly one of the top issues, as they missed having a print schedule. So we are bringing back the print schedule of the FSP events, and hubs have the option. They're running out of time, 2 days left to purchase a hub sponsorship and get us your events, and they'll be in the print schedule. So that's one way. A second way is we have Pork Info, right? As you come into Rogers Campground this year, it's going to be at RV Site 1. So right as the gate lifts, if you're lost, there's going to be a friendly face right there to help you. And the one I'm most excited about is the interactive map and schedule that I mentioned earlier. So we actually have outlined digitally every campsite at using OpenStreetMap to then add plug into our website. So that allows anyone who has a ticket, and I'm going to encourage everybody who's listening, please sign in now. Don't sign in at the registration desk, because we are talking about the White Mountains, and the internet and cell phone service is a little difficult. So this is our first time using this interactive map. So we'd like for any of the things that you can do ahead of time to be done, like making sure you have an account. So with that said, once you sign in, you can RSVP, you can download the events, you can share them to your social media. If you sign up to be a hub organizer, that's no fee. That's not that's different than a sponsor. It's just if somebody's got a site on the campground, you just send me and the IT volunteers proof that you've got that site. We approve you, and you can add any events that you want to your site. And let's see, you can edit them. So if you get there and your site has no water or no electric, or something's wrong with your site, we can quickly edit those, unlike previous years where it was difficult to upload during the festival. So those are improvements that we made based on the need that we could see, and the people saying, how do I find what's going on at the pavilion? There's like 1,000 things here to look through, which is true, and it's great, and it was searchable before, but we're hoping it'll be a little easier to find now.
Yeah. And I will say, having attended several PorcFests now, I came to PorcFest last year. I was just as a civilian. I wasn't associated with the Free State Project at the time. And I mean, it was tremendous, huge turnout. I think perhaps the biggest turnout ever had for PorcFest. I think part of that was a lot of attention from presidential candidates wanting to come to PorcFest and try to make their case to the libertarians of New Hampshire and those we associate with on their candidacy. We had Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy, and a lot of folks turned out to hear them. I do recall, though, that because of that record turnout and so many people at PorcFest above and beyond what we'd seen in years past, the facilities themselves were stretched to capacity a little bit. And I know I've heard that was a common complaint I heard from people, is there weren't enough porta potties, there wasn't enough water. But I know, of course, that the team that you're leading is doing a lot of work this year to make sure that we are over prepared when it comes to facilities. Could you give folks an update on that?
Sure, that it was definitely the biggest complaint of all. We did run out of water. It happened during a rainstorm, but we do think that the Thursday surge of attendees for RFK Jr. had the consequence on Friday to into Saturday, which is a terrible time to be without water. It's our busiest day. The whole campground was without water, so that was tough. Like even in an RV, which is what I rent an RV for the festival. We were using jugs of water to wash our hands. So we don't want anyone to ever feel like they have to choose between having clean hands and coming to PorcFest. So we have upped the number of porta potties by 22 this year. So and those come with their own water supply, so they're not dependent on the campground water supply. They don't take from the campground. We have a regular scheduled cleaner for them too. So we did get comments that until we ran out of water and they were used excessively because of that, they were kept very, very clean. Then we've also got 2 4-stall restroom trailers coming to service parts of the campground that have enough. Because you were saying earlier, you can tent camp. You can tent camp on an RV site. Well, most RVs have their own bathroom. So there aren't a lot of restrooms out in the far corner where a lot of folks end up tent camping. So we're going to put more porta potties and a restroom trailer truck out there for them. And let's see, we're not committed to this yet, but we're thinking with all those extra places that are bringing their own water, that we will have enough water with the campground supply. But we're also very close to hopefully announcing officially that we also will have a backup water supply for the entire campground, as in porting in water trucks and having a distribution. It will be non-potable water because guess what? If you want potable water, you have to talk to the government a lot. And we don't have the resources nor the desire to do that before PorcFest. But Tim, and I'm gonna get his last name right, I hope, Bauman, has done facilities for PorcFest for 10 years. And he is just a wealth of knowledge, and he has worked so hard to make sure our facilities are going to be. We can't do anything about the campground facilities, those aren't ours, but we want to make sure that our attendees have enough water to wash their hands and use the facilities. So we've put a lot of budget into that.
Yeah. I guess I would certainly say for those who are coming to PorcFest or thinking about coming to PorcFest this year, we are doing everything we can to make sure that our facilities are covered above and beyond even what we expect for demand, because we don't want to have any gaps there. But being in kind of the middle of nowhere, it's still, even though we're going to have all these facilities covered above and beyond, it's still a good idea to, buy a case of water or two and bring it with you.
We definitely recommend bringing your own drinking water, because we are libertarians. We're self-responsible. We value self-responsibility. So knowing that you're going camping at a campground that has previously run out of water, please bring it. And we say it's the middle of nowhere, but you're from Maine, I'm from Alaska. It's really not. I mean, there's a grocery store, there's a Dunkin's that has Wi-Fi. It's 2 hours from Manchester. There's a Walmart within 35 minutes. When I lived in Alaska, Walmart was 20 minutes away. It's really not. It's just if you're used to like having everything within 10 minutes, it's a little different. So plan ahead.
All right, that's a good point and a good correction. Not quite the middle of nowhere, just only if you're used to living in like a city where you can get everything you need within 5 minutes.
You probably had no cell phone signal in 2012 when you first went, and now I don't think I've lost cell phone signal at the campground for years.
All right, well that's good to know. That's good to know, especially as I'm going to have to figure out make sure I can do some podcasting from PorcFest. So
Well, you do know when you're live streaming in Ron Paul, you make sure you have the the bandwidth. So I think Olga has Starlink and a backup from one of the seasonal campers. So we have
awesome.
that. And as you mentioned in the intro, we have the 12:7 screen. That's an improvement this year. So not only will Ron Paul be larger than life, which is normal, but also we will have the ability for anybody who's doing a slideshow or at the rave on the emo rave on Thursday night, or we they're going to have to be able to they're going to be able to use this to create this really awesome back, what is it called, like the
Yeah.
stage back. I'm not I'm not an entertainer person.
So there's going to be the giant kind of massive screen that we're renting. That'll be kind of the
Yeah.
right. It'll be kind of the background for the stage. So, yeah. So that anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing that there, and I want to kind of go back to maybe kind of where we were when we got started. You were sharing your story on. I think we got as far as like your first PorcFest, and you kind of making the decision to come to New Hampshire. So I'm sure you've been to many PorcFests in the years since. What are some highlights and some memories as you've seen PorcFest evolve over the last decade that you've since your first?
It's really interesting because my kids have grown up going to PorcFest. So some of my favorite memories are very specific to me, but that's one of the reasons that I want people to attend PorcFest, because they're going to have such a different time than somebody else. The first year I went, I didn't have the kids with me. I'm a bit of a nerd. I went to all the talks. My ex-husband, he hung out at the field and, you know, chatted with people and may have been doing other things that are passed around at the big fire. So we
I don't
had
know
a
what you're
different.
talking about.
Yeah, yeah, definitely it was a cigarette of some kind. So we had a very different experience, with probably why we're now exes. But the the thing that really stood out to me is, my life got really hard. I said my life is awesome here, but my life got really hard for a while. Um, After I moved, I obviously became a single mom of four, and my ex-husband actually left state for over a year. So it was just me and the kids, and I got a health diagnosis that's pretty intense. So there were many years of life being less than ideal. And when my son was about 12, he came to PorcFest and kind of grumbled the whole time. I just left his dad. Maybe it was 13. I had just left, very angry kid. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll pay you $5 an hour if you volunteer. Wherever you want to volunteer, you pick a spot and volunteer. I'll pay you $5 up to 20 hours, which, was a good bit of money for him, and it hurt because at the time I wasn't making a lot of money. And he rangered. He did. At the time, they'd stop the cars and make sure that people had a ticket and kind of direct them. And he gate checked that year. So now he's volunteered every year. He's been to PorcFest. He's now an EMT, taking his EMT advanced exam for New Hampshire next, or is it national? I get it confused. Anyway, he's taking it next week, and he's going to co-lead the Rangers this year as a 20-year-old. So he won't even be as old as PorcFest, but he has learned through the years of this community and how we take responsibility. He's learned what he wants to do with his life, and he wants to help people. And I'm super proud of him. So I have to say that that's probably one of my favorite PorcFest memories, is just seeing my son become be raised with the help of this community, and meeting my best friend there.
Learning some responsibility and
Yeah,
volunteering and
my kids have vended. My youngest broke her wrist there a couple years ago when I
oh
was
no.
I was in the middle of setup and she fell on her scooter, and she was back out vending 2 days later with her cast on, selling stuff. I think she made more that year because she was a kid with a cast. So
Who's going to say no to that?
yeah, it's just an amazing experience. And then I watched, some some films from other people, and they have a totally different experience. They're definitely doing the single person hanging out type of experience.
So one thing I'm certainly looking forward to, I know at PorcFest this year, I'm trying to jump in and help out everywhere I can. I'm looking forward to, I think with like porcupines, I'm going to be like reading them some of the young kids, like the Tuttle twins and the creature from Jekyll Island, getting them young and teaching them about the dangers of central banking. Every young person needs to know the dangers of the Federal Reserve, right? I'm going to be doing a mock legislature exercise with a lot of the older kids, maybe like more middle school and high school age kids. I'm
that
looking
sounds
for,
so neat.
yeah,
Well,
I'm looking forward to seeing what laws they propose to abolish. When I do mock legislatures in the government schools in my district, sometimes I don't know. I love working with kids that way. Uh, but I love it more when they come up with liberty proposals rather than like new laws. But I'm certain with this crowd, they're going to be jumping over themselves to see which government agencies they can abolish. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, I'm going to be giving talks, welcoming and closing. I just found out I'm going to be speaking one of the days. I got to figure on something else. I got to figure out another topic, and then different things involved with the hubs. There's so much going on. But one thing I'm also really looking forward to is, I am planning to volunteer myself with all of the different volunteer teams, like take a couple hours each day and get to know all of the different teams and from free aid to pork rangers to registration to facilities. There's so many different ways to volunteer and get and be involved. You can come to PorcFest and you can just be an attendee and go around to all the different events, and that's wonderful. Or you could, go to the next level and actually be involved in the process of making PorcFest function and making it happen. And of course, even just a 4-hour shift is in a week-long event is a huge contribution and potentially a lot of fun, a great way to kind of meet people and get involved. What do you have to say about some of the volunteer activities that exist? And do we still need volunteers? Can people still sign up?
we definitely need volunteers. One of the last ones that we fill in is registration, which is probably one of the easiest ones. We have a pretty streamlined at this point to get people checked in. Um, it usually takes less than a minute, but it does give you a chance to greet people. And I didn't say this earlier on, and I almost always do it anytime I do any kind of speaking. I'm an introvert. I do not thrive on being on the camera, on the stage, talking to folks. I can do it. I'm not terrified. I'm not shy. I'm just an introvert. And I think that there's a lot of us in this community that are introverts. And I like to point out that even introverts, we will find a role for you. Like if you want to haul trash in the evenings for us, excellent, wonderful. Please sign up. If you want to parole around the campground in a golf cart for rangers and look for missing kids, please sign up. I mean, most of the time what our rangers are doing is not missing kids, missing parents. Like the kids are like, okay, my parents wandered off again, because that really is what happens more than the kids. um, Porcupines could use help. Stephanie does such an amazing job creating these great activities for the kids, like you mentioned, but also she does talks for the parents in the space while the kids are entertained, which is brilliant because as a parent, there was many years that I couldn't get to a talk at all because I had my kids and they weren't going to set through a talk. So she just was like, "This is our reality. We're going to have the talks right here while the kids play." And I mean, what a great solution! So definitely, she could use more help. Pork info. If you are the friendly, want to chat to everybody, tell them how the roads go one way. Shanna would love to have more volunteers. Free aid if you have any medical experience, or if you just stay really calm under pressure and can, you know, get the right medical person there. That's also really important. Sometimes you don't have to be trained on how to do something if you can stay calm in a situation. And we combined last year the Rangers and Free Aid into one tent. So they actually have a space where they can do classes and demonstrations. So if you're really good at self-defense and you want to teach women how to stay armed, I mean, I'm sure we have a space and you could create that kind of a class. So there's just so many opportunities. And if you really want to, you can clean bathrooms. But that one doesn't usually get volunteered for. We usually end up paying for that one. so 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 that's it. I mean, that's I feel like I might be skipping something major. Oh, the pavilion volunteers. So Olga Sorens has done an amazing job filling out the schedule, and she has everything ready to go. The speakers will tell us exactly what they need and when they need it. And Brown is going to do AV again. So in the pavilion and other places. So we have a great channel after the fact, but during the week we could use people to move chairs or sweep the floors in the pavilion, check on things at 101, make sure our main volunteer there isn't getting burnout. I mean, really, if you come up to Chris Lopez at PorcFest and say, I want to help somewhere, she will find you a place. She's our volunteer coordinator. So please do. And one of the ways you can help is to sell us more tickets, because we've got some left. We got some campsites left, and we want to fill that up. So that's another thing. If you can't commit to even going this year, you can share our media that we're putting out and encourage other people to go. So please do that.
That's a good note for those who are listening. One thing you could do to tell your friends about PorcFest is to share this episode of the Porcupine Report with them, in which we're going over it all. So share this with your friends, share this with your family. Tell them they may want to come. You know, I've got so many people in Maine who are coming to me and asking me, what's PorcFest, right? I guess they're just hearing about me talking about it on social media and the show. So hopefully we'll get a lot of new people this year. And yeah, you can help with that. Word of mouth is the most powerful form of advertising. You know, we could put up all kinds of ads and all that, but nothing is more effective than you just inviting someone to come and join you, or telling them, I can't make it this year, but you don't want to miss this. But hopefully you're going to make it this year. I don't know what, some friend getting married or something that, they'll get married again, come to PorcFest.
You can always send them an anniversary gift.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would anybody? Yeah. What a bad week for anything except PorcFest.
Yeah. I mean, if someone chooses to get married during the week of PorcFest, are they even really your friend anyway? Don't they know? Shouldn't they have considered this? Anyway. All right. Well, any final words you want to share with folks on PorcFest before we wrap up the episode for the day?
I would just like to round out a little bit of my story, if that's okay, and say why life turned out so great for me. Being here in this community was also, I have volunteered and been successful. I've purchased multifamilies. I'm a realtor. I'm now an owner of my small real estate company. So just the opportunities are here in New Hampshire, and I found out about that from going to PorcFest. And that's what I always like. The reason I do this is I could be off trying to make money, and this has taken a lot of time. It's almost been a full-time job this year. But I think we are going to make New Hampshire the best place to be for liberty. And we're going to show people that when they come to PorcFest, they're going to get a chance to meet folks and see what we're building here. And then they can jump in and they can be part of the project, and they can look back in 20 years and say, I helped build that, because I sleep very well at night knowing I'm putting in my fullest practical effort. So yeah, that's my why. So come to PorcFest and see what a pop-up libertarian society can actually look like. And to be in community with so many people who share your values. You won't be surrounded. It'll be the one time in your life
you don't feel completely surrounded by status. If you live in one of the other 49 states, right? New Hampshire, we get to experience that almost every single day with all the liberty events that take place in our state. And even if you go to the state house, you got like a quarter of the members there who love liberty, which is very odd considering legislative bodies in this country.
I mean, it's not. It's calculated though. So it's the only place that I feel normal. I mean, I loved living in Alaska, but even there, I didn't feel quite normal. But when I moved to New Hampshire, it was like, oh, there are other people that think like me. So I'm super excited.
Awesome.
One of the speakers is my own personal invite this year. So Dana Martin, the unschooling mom that I followed since I first had kids. Her kids are pretty well, a couple are adults now as well, similar to mine. But she's going to come and speak. So I'm excited to finally meet her in person. So
awesome.
Another reason to volunteer is you get to like invite, like anybody can invite who they want. If you've got somebody you think would be great for the stage or for a speaker spot, we're always open to that. But that was my personal person to pick, that and Robert Kiyosaki. So if he listens to your show, Eric, I'd love him to come to PorcFest, but I haven't figured out how to catch his ear yet.
Well, I know I'm going to see him at Freedom Fest this year, so I'll extend an invitation to him. I've been a fan of Robert Kiyosaki ever since my dad gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was in like the 7th grade. So
that's awesome.
I learned I learned, among other things, that a house is not an asset, it's a liability unless you are getting income off of it by renting it out. So
that's how I have enough time that's how I have the ability to do this. I read Robert Kiyosaki before I had my first son or my first kid in 2003. He's my only son. So, and I actually did not start with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He published a book before the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series.
You want to be rich and happy, don't go to school?
Yes. That's the first one I bought. And I loved that book so much that I then, read most of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books as well. And
my parents got worried when I read that one because I was suddenly talking about not going to college. Anyway, that's a whole other story. Well, all right, Constance, thank you so much for being our guest this week and for sharing with everyone about PorcFest. We're going to do one final promotion for PorcFest to remind folks, get your tickets at PorcFest.com. We can't sell it any more than we already have, right? The whole episode's been a giant promo for PorcFest. If you're not coming, you're missing out. What are you doing with your life? You're going to want to be there. You want to be there with people who share your values, people who love liberty. It's family friendly. We got so many great speakers coming. We're going to have plenty of porta potties for everyone. Any final pitch you want to tell people?
I want to say thank you so much to my team because they have brought their A game and they are doing an amazing job and you guys are all going to be blown away. So I want that to be my final pitch, that you have these folks who've been working to put together this festival for almost like full year. We started as soon as PorcFest ended last year. Say thank you to these folks in person, get to PorcFest, give them a hug, give them a high five, hand them a water. We really are trying our best to make this amazing festival for you guys. So we want you to enjoy it.
Absolutely. So get your tickets at PorcFest.com. That's pork with a C, not a K. PorcFest.com. All right. Thank you, Constance. Really glad to have you on this evening.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. That's the show. That was episode 16. We told you all enough. All right. PorcFest.com, right? Get your tickets. All right. So I want to thank our technical producer, Raynita, for running everything behind the scenes. And really appreciate you, our audience, for listening in. If you have any feedback on the show, come to PorcFest and tell me, and I'll see you there. I'd love to hear what you think. And furthermore, my opinion is the Federal Reserve should be destroyed. Good night, everyone.